And welcome. This is Sunrise. I'm Ayo Makide, and I bid you welcome to the show. Hope you've had a good week so far. And if you hadn't had it this morning, it's 9 o'clock already. So hope you've had your cocoa or cocoa, you know. Anyway, as you can see, I'm home alone today, but not really, because there is a whole team, you know, working behind the scene to ensure that this comes to you. Don't worry, Alera will be here next week, and she's on a national assignment, if I can use that term, but we'll talk about that when she returns. However, one of the things that's caught my attention in the course of the week is that it's in the news. Of course, you must have seen it on Channels Television, that India has approved its second locally manufactured COVID vaccine, and which has helped the country to scale up massively in the area of vaccination of its people. That was done such that in one day, as a result of that, that innovation of the state, some 9.3 million people were vaccinated in one day. At least that's what's in the news. Now, what's interesting about that one is that the vaccine it uses what they call a needle-free injector. What that means, I wouldn't know, but one of my colleagues here has said it's one of those things that people use when they want to inject themselves, you know, for those who use that kind of medication. If you don't know it, you may just do a Google search of needle-free injector. You'll see what that means. Well, for me, what's interesting is India is doing that for its people. And the question I've asked over and over again, from March last year, what are low-hanging fruits? We hear it's herbs. How far with that? More than a year after? Well, I guess the jury is still out there. Of course, we've had that conversation with the NAFDAC DG, and she said they're getting closer to it. How close we need to be? I guess it's as a result of the need for us to ensure that only safe medications come to our people. So that's very, very important. So Nigerians are waiting. India has vaccinated people. Were about 10% of its population, 1.3 billion people. We, from information that I still have so far, haven't done so much in that department. And still talking about COVID-19, there was this information that's available. Look at it. The highest figure we ever had for a day was in January 22 this year, and it's about 2,300 plus people that were infected in one day. One day we had that many results. And just 2 days ago, August 19, and if you see that we reduced the spike after that drastically and massively until we were almost zero, but then see that we're picking up again. Just 2 days ago, the spike you can see on the far right of your screen is more than 1,000 people, more than 1,000 positive cases recorded in one day. For me, that's a little scary, and it goes to speak to the fact that we need to take all the necessary precautions that we have to take. Look, this thing called face mask, it's really easy to use. I know it can be very, very difficult. I mean, and there are quite a few out there. I know it's very discomforting. I know, I'm aware. And there are so many theories out there about this thing. But the truth is, and you know, many people, even medical practitioners, will still tell us we're still learning about COVID-19 because we don't know everything we need to know about it. There's been 3 mutations so far, and one of our guests on this program has told us we have something in the region of 5,000 various kinds of coronaviruses. Which one is more lethal? Who knows? But the one that is most prominent now is the Delta variant, which is really, really virulent. And we need to take all the precaution we need to take. And what's interesting is they won't say you die of COVID-19, you die of complications from COVID-19. In other words, it is going to make some things in the system worse. That's why they say that those people who have one medical condition inherent before now should take all the necessary precautions necessary. And this is why we are hampering on this one more time. Do the needful for yourself and the people you love, because when you use this mask, you are not using it just for yourself. You are using it for those people that you love. And there are also ways to use them. Yeah, it's inconvenient. It's difficult, but it's something we need to do. Nobody likes to go to hospital, but if you have to go to hospital in order to get well, then you have to go. You're bedridden for that length of time. If you don't want that to be your case, do the needful. Protect yourself. They are called non-pharmaceutical initiatives or interventions. Use them. It's good for everyone. Now, another thing that's caught my attention in the course of the week is the Auditor General's report. Yes, I know. I'm always talking about the Auditor General's report. But how useful has it been in fighting against corruption? How useful has it been in deterring corruption, in preventing corruption from happening? That's another conversation altogether. In the course of the week, we understand that the Office of the Auditor General has, presented the 2019 Auditor General's report. 2019 Auditor General's report. This is August 2021. So what's going to happen to that one? It was only in this year that considerations were made about the 2015 Auditor General's report. And guess what? We have reports from the Auditor General's office from 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019. 8 years, 8 reports. And there are various indictments in them. As a matter of fact, in this particular Auditor General's report, the Auditor General's office, well, at least the report says that 4.973 trillion naira are unsubstantiatedly balanced. I don't even know what that English word is, but find out. Do a simple search. Let's follow the money, as I say. 4.973 trillion naira. We don't even know it. We don't know what it looks like. We don't know the shape it's taking, and it's definitely giving so many people a lot of concern. Unsubstantiated balances uncovered in the 2019 Auditor General's report. So where are we going to get that from? That's 2019 alone. And just do a back check. You'll find out that it's like that all through the years. So how are we blocking these leakages? That's why people still talk about the CSO, civil society organizations, are still talking about the Audit Commission bill. Maybe that will help, because we cannot fight it successfully if we can prevent it. And if we do not want to prevent it, then it means we don't want to stop fighting it. And guess what? The fight is never going to end. So where should we be? I guess the ball is back in the court of the National Assembly, members of the National Assembly, the two chambers of the House of Representatives and the Senate. Well, so that's the much I'd like to do right now. Let's get into the issues for the day. And in the course of the week, the first thing we'll be talking about will be World Humanitarian Day. That's the first conversation we're going to be having. I had a very, very chilling experience talking about this on Sunrise Daily earlier in the week, because, gosh, the living conditions of people in Benue, that's the only one we know. How about so many others, even those who are not in IDPs? What kind of living conditions? In Lagos here, I mean, go to Butemeta, you see all kinds of things. But that's one of the issues we're beginning with. And then we'll be talking about the state of the nation. So many issues making the rounds on the front pages: security, economy, PIB, you name it. They're all right there on the front pages. And then we'll be talking about cybersecurity. There's a lot of concern about that one now, especially in the light of the fact that we are more online now since the pandemic hit. We are more online now than ever before, and we need to be secure. Maybe there are things you need to do, things you need to know, opportunities you need to explore. You find out in the course of the program today. And of course, we'll be closing with the Artist of the Week. Yes, I know. It's a he. So that's the show for today. That's what it's going to be like. So you just stick with us. As I said earlier, if you haven't,
it is World Humanitarian Day, and the federal government, along with its partners from multiple agencies, both local and foreign, is coming up again with a plan to tackle its humanitarian crisis. The humanitarian crisis is a global issue, one that requires urgent action from governments to tackle the challenges faced by the world's most vulnerable, especially in countries like Nigeria, dealing with climate change, insurgency, and the impact these two forces have on an already weakened system.
I do believe in continuation of the counterinsurgency effort of the Nigerian Armed Forces and the counter-terrorism efforts of the Multinational Joint Task Force. But our call has been clear. This has to be complemented with what we call dialogue and a peace-building process to achieve peace.
In 2018, Nigeria's humanitarian response plan targeted 6.1 million people. In 2021, that figure has risen to 7.1 million people. 1.8 million Nigerians are internally displaced, an increase from the 1.1 million recorded in 2018. Places like Ran in Borno State are still unable to receive humanitarian assistance thanks to insurgency. This time, the Nigerian government is seeking localized solutions which they believe will be more sustainable. The framework has 7 priority areas, ranging from improving the living standards in local communities to peace building.
The National Humanitarian Development Peace Framework is a collective vision jointly developed with relevant stakeholders, such as the UN OCHA, and will be deployed through engagement with international, regional, and state actors who are expected to localize, own, and develop implementation strategies that are tailored to specific needs of persons of concern in communities across the country.
Nigeria's most vulnerable not only have to deal with the economic impact of climate change to their lives, but also have to deal with being displaced, killed, and kidnapped by insurgents, especially in the northern part of the country. The call is for conversations like these ones to move from podiums to actual work on the ground, so some results can be seen in Nigeria's humanitarian crisis. Kayla Megwa, Channels Television News.
Thanks for staying with us. The World Humanitarian Day is one set aside to bring together partners across the humanitarian system in the world to advocate for the survival, the well-being, and the dignity of human beings affected by all kinds of crises, as well as safety for health workers and their security as well. But one of the issues, a major issue on the front burner, is the call on global climate emergency. And if you have seen all that happened in Haiti and a number of other countries across the world, even here in Nigeria, the flood in Yobe, the flood in Bauchi, also Borno State, definitely something that gives concern. But those are just some of the issues that will be on the burner as well, as far as humanitarian ecosystem is concerned. Let's have a conversation this morning on the World Humanitarian Day. Trond Jensen joins us this morning from our Abuja studio. He's head of office, United Nations Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, UNOCHA, Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining us today. Most certainly, well, I would assume that it's a big concern, both the issues around humanitarian advocacy in the country, as well as getting the job of humanitarian services done in the country. Can you give us an idea what it's been like? Can you hear me, Mr. Jensen?
Sorry, can you please repeat the question? I think there's a little bit of a delay. Yes, now I can hear you. Thank you.
Please go ahead.
So thank you so much for inviting me this morning, and thank you for bringing up the issue of World Humanitarian Day. It's a very important occasion for us in terms of being able to not only commemorate humanitarian workers who have given their lives in the service of others, but it's also an important event in terms of bringing important issues to the fore. And as you said, this year, the theme for World Humanitarian Day is climate change. And as the Secretary General only said a couple of weeks ago with the IPCC report, it's an existential crisis for humanity. If we do not take action, the planet and our existence is at peril. And I think it's been illustrated, as you say, by the flooding in Nigeria. It's been illustrated by the fires that we are seeing raging through Europe, through the Americas, and elsewhere. It's also illustrated by the drought we are experiencing across the world. So food production is put at peril, people's survival is put at peril, and that's why we think it's so important to make sure that it's well understood that unless we address this challenge together, that hundreds of millions, if not billions of people's lives will be severely affected and potentially be at risk.
Speak to the Nigerian part, so to speak. I'm just wondering what you consider the challenges to be getting humanitarian logistics across. The flooding in those two states, we knew it was going to come. One of the issues that a number of people will be wondering is, if we knew that this was going to happen, is there any way we could have staved off the impact? Just this morning, I saw in the news a woman in Yobe State who lost 2 of her children to a flooding as a result of heavy downpour. So I'm just wondering if there is any way one could have made sure such things don't happen, so we don't have fatalities, that will get to the minds and the hearts of the people who would be affected.
Yeah, no, I think there's thank you for that question, Ayo. I think there's a number of things that we can do to address issues like flooding. It happens every year. It's a seasonal event. What we need to make sure is that there is awareness of the risks that comes with climate change and flooding. That there needs to be preparedness in terms of making sure that we have the people, the resources that we can use, deploy to address the consequences of it. Early warning, so that if areas are flooded, so that people can move to higher ground if possible. But also, as you said, very critically, prevention. And of course, I think the big issue with climate change now is that it's already happening. We are already seeing the impact in terms of flooding in places like Yobe. And that's why it's so important that we have urgent action in terms of reducing greenhouse gases, in terms of making sure that we can reduce the risk for this happening. Action is needed now, not tomorrow, in terms of then being able to address some of the consequences of global warming. And of course, given that is already happening, we then have to try to mitigate the impact of climate change as it is happening. So these two things need to happen in parallel, reducing what causes climate change, but also then trying to mitigate the impact of climate change as it is unfolding.
And what you all in the field have told us over and over again, that some of these things are self-induced. We literally cost them, and it's all a function of behavior and all of that. I'm just wondering if you could also help us to, talk us through this. We just talked about flooding, and you've talked about the impact and effect of climate change. What are those other humanitarian challenges that you would say, maybe like top 5 humanitarian challenges that we have to battle with in the country, irrespective of whatever the region? We know that definitely insecurity is a major issue that's induced internally displaced persons in the Northeast and several others like that. Are there others that many people may not be aware of, that, okay, these are other humanitarian crises that we have in country?
Thank you for that question, Ayu. Of course, we as OCHA, there is an international operation in the northeast of Nigeria, where we work very closely with the government of Nigeria in terms of trying to address the consequences of conflict. And that falls within our mandate. We know that there are other humanitarian needs across Nigeria, but clearly in the northeast there is a conflict which is profoundly impacting on people's lives. You can imagine there are over 2 million people who are internally displaced. They're uprooted from their homes, which means that they lose the shelter, the homes, but not only that, they also lose their income, the means of sustenance. And that's a tragedy in itself. What we're also seeing as part of the conflict in the northeast is that the non-state armed groups have been attacking social infrastructure such as schools, such as hospitals and clinics. And of course that also has a profound impact then on people's ability to survive, as well as their welfare. So over this year, we estimate that there are around about 8.6 million people who have some form of humanitarian need, of which we are trying to assist then 6.4 million out of these people who have the most urgent needs. And that's everything from providing them with food on a daily basis, providing them with shelter, providing them with protection, access to healthcare, access to education. In other words, all the things that they will then need in terms of being able to survive. It's extremely challenging in the sense that, of course, the Northeast is insecure, and that means that the humanitarian aid workers...
Okay.
Please.
Yeah. Mr. Jensen, clearly, conflict has continued to be the main driver of humanitarian needs, especially in the Northeast. And you spoke earlier about prevention of this crisis. So how will you rate the effort so far to stop the crisis that has induced the crisis that we have in the Northeast?
That's a very good question, and thank you for asking that question. As humanitarians, we are only dealing with the consequences of the crisis. That means that we are trying as best as we can to enable people to survive. Of course, what we must ensure is that people don't just survive, but that they actually have a life. What we then need to do is we need to work together in tandem with the so-called development actors, as well as the people who are then promoting peace. Let me put it this way. There are no humanitarian solutions for humanitarian crisis. There are political solutions supported by development interventions. And I think this is something I was very, very encouraged to see that the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Social Development then launched on World Humanitarian Day their framework for linking humanitarian development and peace efforts. And that's certainly something that we want to support in terms of making sure that other actors can then start addressing the causes of conflict so that we can prevent this from happening. People having to flee their homes, protection violations where men, women and children are being killed as a result of conflict.
Clearly, one other challenge that we all have seen, and you have spoken to that as well, one way or another, is that humanitarian workers are always at risk as well. Of course, that story in 2003 of a bomb attack on a hotel in Baghdad killed 22 humanitarian workers, including the UN Special Representative of the Secretary General for Iraq, Sergio Vieira de Mello. So even here in Nigeria, we hear that about 475 aid workers were killed, injured, or kidnapped within the last year. So I'm just wondering, how do you deal with this? Because if all I want to do is good and my life is in jeopardy as a result of that, I'm wondering, why would anyone want to go into humanitarian services? What keeps them going? Those that are there whose lives are literally at risk. And how can people help to protect aid workers?
Thank you for that question, Ayo. And it's a tragedy that people who are putting their lives at risk to help others, I mean, this is the true sense of humanity, that they should be then subjected to violence. Is supposed to protect them. Now, one of the things that I certainly hugely appreciate is the courage, the tenacity and the commitment of aid workers in Nigeria, the vast majority of which are Nigerians. So what we are trying to do is to make sure that we protect them as best as we can in terms of the security measures that we are putting in place. We are, in terms of then providing them with the infrastructure, transport, etc., but also making sure that they have local acceptance, that local communities are also protecting aid workers. And of course we are working with the government in terms of making sure that these people are protected. It's a tragedy that in the 21st century aid workers are still being targeted, and of course that was one of the themes of World Humanitarian Days in the past, that humanitarians are not targets. And of course anyone who can influence the non-state armed groups in terms of making sure that they understand the value of what we are trying to do, helping civilians in the conflict situation, that as a result of that, humanitarians should not be targeted.
Well, thank you for that one, and one can just hope and pray that that will continue to be our experience. Well, along the line also, another endangered species, if I can use that, are children. Already over 2 million children go hungry in conflict in the Northeast alone. And I don't even want us to make this about just the Northeast. It's something that's happening all over the nation. And your office, I know that there are some things you may not be able to really reference, but it's what your office has to do, intervene in all these crises in the country. Hopefully we will be able to talk to someone within the country as well. Now, Save the Children says 700,000 children under 5 are among the 2.3 million children affected by crisis, and 10.5 million of those children that are out of school in the country. The question anyone would want to ask you is there any plan you can see or you know about, or any action being taken to reduce these numbers or eliminate them eventually?
So, again, perhaps to emphasize that that we are working very closely with development actors. So our emphasis on children who are affected by the conflict in the Northeast, and of course it's part of a much bigger problem. And I know that our colleagues in Save the Children, in UNICEF, and other organizations, I think there are some 40-odd partners who work on education alone, trying then to protect children. I think it's a multifaceted issue, as you said, endangered species. This is the future of Nigeria, and of course, in northeast Nigeria, in Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe, what we are doing is putting a great emphasis on making sure that children can survive and that they do have what they need in terms of education, in terms of nutrition, in terms of water and sanitation, protection, healthcare, water and sanitation, and all the things that they need. So I think a key, as you said, in terms of this is education, because many of these things come together in education, and I think it's important in terms of providing a future for children that have been affected by conflict, particularly in terms of them then being able to have fulfilling lives later on. I think it's a tragedy, of course, that because of conflict, as I said before, schools have been burnt, destroyed. So what we are trying to do then is to establish temporary learning centres, have accelerated learning so that children who have lost out on education, they can catch up. We're also then screening children to make sure that they have the nutrition that they need, addressing things like protection of children, because we know that there is recruitment of children in terms of the armed conflict. We know that children often are put to work rather than going to school because of the situation of the family. So what we are trying to do is then to ensure that children are protected and they have access to the services that they need. But also to say the situation of children, of course, is very much linked to the situation of women. And women, if there is another group which is disproportionately affected by conflict, it is women who, in terms of protection against sexual violence and violations of their rights, in terms of having access to healthcare, having access to food, we're also making sure, as much as we can, then to address the situation of women in all of this.
Mr. Johnson, talking about interventions and partnerships which you referenced, concerning the Save the Children, I'm wondering if you can talk to us about what kind of interventions or partnerships would you say have come from the private sector in the country, and how significant would you say that has been in helping out with the humanitarian crisis we have on our hands?
That's a very, very good question. We have been looking at the opportunities of the private sector supporting the work that we do. And in the past, we've had a number of companies who have contributed towards these efforts with us, providing a significant sum of money, which has then been put through good use through the United Nations Development Programme. And I think it illustrates the need for all parties to come together, whether they are humanitarians, whether they're the private sector, or individuals, and perhaps also to highlight the number of Nigerian non-governmental organizations who are also then receiving support from the private sector, the thousands of Nigerian volunteers who are also giving their time as well as effort in terms of aiding the humanitarian operation. So I think it's an absolutely critical part of what we do is to get not just the private sector, but also grassroots organizations. And this was something that was also talked about on World Humanitarian Day in terms of then localizing the operation, making sure that it's a sustainable effort in terms of Nigerian ownership of the humanitarian response.
Hopefully we'll be able to talk to some private sector practitioners real soon. We're trying to get them on board so that we can have their own perspectives and challenges as well, if any. But if you would speak to priorities in the humanitarian ecosystem, what would it be? We know that there are those who are trying to intervene with food, with health, interventions, education, and stuff like that. So if you would suggest prioritization based on your experience working in this space, what kind of priorities would you be suggesting?
So what we do together with, no, thank you, Ayo, that's a very good question. So what we do every year, we go through a large exercise with all our partners, Nigerian non-governmental organizations, international non-governmental organizations, the United Nations system, as well as federal and state government. And what we do is we map out all the various types of needs that people have, where they are, and what those, and based on that, we then formulate a plan, which is called the Humanitarian Response Plan for Nigeria. And we're right in that process, in the middle of that process now. And of course, one of the big challenges that we have is that we have scarce resources. So last year we asked for $1.1 billion, and we received some $660 million. So roughly half of the resources that we asked for. And that means that we have to do things smarter. We have to be able to better prioritize the interventions. And very often what we are doing is there's a focus on the immediate life-saving interventions, so food, health, etc. But also what we are trying to do is to make sure that people become more resilient. So it's a focus on education. It's a focus on livelihoods in terms of people being able to go back and grow foods and exercise whatever other types of work that will give them a better future. But in terms of the immediate priorities we have right now is, of course, the food crisis that we are seeing unfolding in the Northeast. So some 4.4 million people are affected by food shortages, and we're trying then our best in terms of making sure that they have access to food, either in terms of food commodities or then through vouchers or cash, so that they can buy themselves the food that they need. But also a focus on then particularly children who are adversely affected by the food crisis in terms of nutrition interventions, water and sanitation interventions, which will then enable them to survive this crisis. So that's one of the immediate priorities that we have. The second immediate priority is the impact then of the rainy season. As we talked about earlier, in terms of making sure that we can mitigate the impact of flooding, in terms of the impact that has on people's housing, but also then in terms of addressing the health needs that comes with the rainy season. The spread of waterborne disease, such as acute watery diarrhea, potentially cholera, infestation infestations of mosquitoes causing malaria, etc. So those are two of our immediate priorities for the next few months.
Well, it's very, very interesting that, that's coming. At least we're trying to get these initiatives that you talk about. One other question, because really, I mean, I'm just wondering if you need so much resources and you got roughly half. I'm wondering what you think the challenges are. I know that there's what they call corporate social responsibility. There's what they call personal social responsibility. So I'm wondering which one, what do you think are the inhibitions in terms of, getting these funds across? Well, it is something that companies do. I'm talking about private sector now, or even private individuals. If private individuals were to go in, how would you suggest the entry level should be? Oh, I'm pretty sure that we're working on that right now, Mr. Jensen. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, no, I can hear you. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm wondering what you think.
Yeah, I can hear you. Thank you.
Yeah, what you think the challenges are or the inhibitions are about getting those funds out? Is it because it's not for profit, or is it because people do not even understand what it means, what this whole humanitarian issues really mean? What do you think the inhibitions are?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question, but I assume you asked about resources.
I'm asking what you think the inhibitions, what is making it difficult for people to, what do you think is making it difficult for us to get the funds for humanitarian interventions? That's the question I'm asking.
So it's, let me put things in perspective. One of the things that we are expecting with climate change is that the numbers of people who have some form of humanitarian need will grow exponentially with climate change. People who will be displaced, people who live in lower-lying regions along coastal areas, who will no longer potentially be able to live there. People displaced by flooding, by forest fires, people who will be put at peril in terms of food shortages, etc. And that means that by 2030, we estimate that the humanitarian needs in terms of addressing these humanitarian needs will then increase to some $50 billion, almost double of what we require to meet the needs of some 200 million people today. Now, that's absolutely critical that we are able to secure those resources. Sadly, what we have seen is that our donors, member states, are extremely generous. But at the same time, we know that many of the member states, the countries that we depend on for humanitarian contributions, their economies have been hard hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. And that means that some of them have reduced their contributions towards humanitarian action. And that's, of course, that is, of course, a big challenge. So that means that, if we do not get more resources, we then have to use these resources more smartly, more efficiently. We need to better prioritize our humanitarian action so that we get more value in terms of those interactions. So it's a big challenge in terms of humanitarian resources, and And of course, we are hoping that the solidarity of member states will extend beyond their borders. Because again, many of the countries that have been worst affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, of course, have been countries in the global south. Many of the countries that will be worst affected by climate change, by no fault of their own, will be in the global south. So, of course, the argument has to be that many of the problems that we are facing today have been caused by patterns of consumption, as you said initially, by the way of life in the richer nations.
Okay. Well, Mr. Johnson, it's it's quite a mouthful, a life full, if I can even say that, all that you have told us, and there's so much to really unpack. I seem to be using that word too frequently these days. But we have to thank you. This is a conversation that we can't just end now, because we're not just talking about 10 people or 20 people. We're talking about millions of people whose lives are affected. 2.3 million children. And we can just imagine the number of adults that we're talking about here. We're going to have this conversation another time, Mr. Johnson. Tron Johnson is head of office, United Nations Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, UN OCHA, Nigeria. Thank you so much for your time and your thoughts this morning. So Sunrise is back after now. Do stay with us. So the state of the nation is something that we will always have to talk about, and it's for us as a people to look at it. And there are always many issues to look at when we talk about the state of the nation. Of course, you remember that Monday in the week that's ending today, the president signed the longer-awaited PIB into PIA, so Petroleum Industry Act 2021. It's become law now after over a decade. It remained in the National Assembly. So, of course, all of that attention is not just going to go away. There's always a lot to talk about there. Of course, successive sessions of the Senate and House of Representatives didn't approve some sweeping reforms, as it were. But then there are others who say, look, this is a good start. Do we all agree? Well, I guess the jury is out there. The controversies over the 3% host communities fund, as well as the 30% Frontier Basin fund, all of that is also making the news. So it's one of the things in the state of the nation. Insecurity is there. The humanitarian crisis we spoke about earlier is there. Climate change impact is there, and so many other things. And the fact that the country continues to borrow and borrow to the point that the Federal Ministry of Finance and National Planning is saying, guys, we're not going to stop borrowing simply because our revenue is not just enough. We borrow, we don't earn enough, on and on. All of that conversation we've packed into this segment of the program this morning. Biodun Shoumi joins us today. He is a social commentator. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, good morning.
He's here with Ezekiel Nyaetok, who is convener, Nigeria First Initiative. He joins us virtually. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Mr. Nyaetok. All right, so let's begin with you, Mr. Shoumi. First of all, your take on this PIA. It's evolved over the years. Of course, the oil and gas governance, PIGB into whatever else it has become over the years. What's your take, especially in the light of the several controversies making the rounds about the Act and some of its provisions?
Yeah, in the first instance, the PIB passage is long overdue. Because I think the last Petroleum Act was 1969, and therefore we've been operating with obsolete laws in a way that petrol crude oil pumped out from the ground is not measured from where it's pumped, but at the storage tank, and consequently, that allowed for a lot of malpractices. Oil companies undercharging us and not paying directly what they actually pump from the ground. So we have those major problems, and then there's the issue of the host community. They're experiencing huge problems, environmental degradation, caused by oil spillages. So many huge problems. The farming communities suffered, fish farming particularly, and communities around where oil are actually pumped, around the riverine areas, actually depends on fish. So there's no way how we won't have to compensate them one way or the other. And they did ask for 10% on the PIB, and which is not too much, bearing in mind the problems and the poverty in the country. But eventually we got 3% approved for them. That itself is a major problem because that is totally unacceptable. In other climes, if you go to Texas, for instance, the community producing the oil owns the oil, not the government. So therefore, why would you now choose to give a paltry sum of 3%, to these communities? So that is the first major problem with the PIB. The second problem, it's the issue of 30% Frontier Basin's fund. What do they mean by Frontier Basin? Federal government used to go into partnership with multinational companies, to fund oil exploration. So what has happened is, over the years, we have now incurred so much debt since the last debt was forgiven under Obasanjo. Today, our total national debt is $104.9 billion. And because of that, we're spending over 80% of our income earning, foreign exchange income earning, to service these debts. So government is in a dilemma. How do you fund oil exploration? But there are two issues around the Frontier Basin. The Frontier Basin they're talking about, particularly, the Sokoto Basin, the Adamawa and others, they have invested so much billions in the past with little result. Yes, I agree there's a good reason to talk about investing in Anambra Basin or the Dahomey Basin. Dahomey Basin is also very, very promising. But we have lumped the promising basin, with the ones we have invested billions over the years in dollars, which are less promising. And now the PIB is saying that, look, we're going to have to allocate 30%, to fund, the exploration of oil, which in any case, the wells will be owned by private individuals. And that is what the host community is objecting to. 3% is a paltry sum, which is not enough. 2, why do you explore oil, from our own area and then invest 30%, to try and develop wells in other areas? So these are the basic contentions in this matter. What the government should have done, in my view, is that before signing it into law, the president should have caused a review, rather than saying we will review it after signing it into law. Because once you sign it into law, the review will not happen easily, and it will take a long time. Then you face a major challenge about those who will benefit from the 30% expropriation of the Niger Delta resources, to develop those areas, through the PIB, would not easily agree to any review. So I think the president was misled into signing that PIB law into law, rather than causing the review first, review it upward. Even if we can't grant 10%, 8% will still be something fair enough, rather than condemning them to 3% derivation.
Okay. Well, Mr. Nyetok, I don't know what your take is on this same issue. There are those who also say, look, 3% is not good enough, but it's a fair start. What do you think?
I've been at pains for a while now trying to understand why we must continue to go through this vicious cycle. And the answer is that we are expecting a dog to meow or a cat to bark. I'm more of a witness. I'm more of a storyteller. I'll just take a little of your time to tell you something. Before you came on this program, as at yesterday, you had a kind of editorial team meeting to determine the topic, to determine the guests you're going to have, to determine, after everything has been done, you sit back yourself and you went to do your research on the topics and then maybe a profiling of the guests. You even went to the point of the sort of outfit you wear to give the image to achieve the desired intention from the beginning. Now that's called a process. As a result, we are able to come to this program. You are having the right guests. You are asking the right questions. At the end of the day, you are going to go home and your viewers are going to be happy. Why? Because there was a fit for purpose. There was a process. There was an understanding. Bring that to government. Who are the people in government? How did they get into government? What do they want to achieve? These are the things that determine the way they get about the things they do. If these are rent seekers, you don't expect them to look at issues objectively. It's only commonsensical that any investor that wants to invest looks at one aspect first above every other thing: peace, safety, his safety and the security of his business. And within this context, I mean, using a sledgehammer to kill a fly tells you, make the host communities to be very happy. Make them very happy. They are so enthusiastic. They are looking forward to these people coming. They're even telling the visitors, what do you want? You want to do this? How can we do this? They are making, because the anticipation before time is so much in the positive. Now, these vibes goes out and the international communities, one, they spot the opportunities, good business to be made. Second, they see the host communities aspect, we can't wait to have you. Thirdly, because there's stable operational environment and there is opportunity, people are falling over themselves to come in and invest. And then the federal government gets the funds. So what are you doing instead? Now, the PIB has had several, the PIA now, or PIB then, has had several evolutions. And at a stage, it was like 20% for host communities and nothing for this exploration of the frontier basins. But now it comes to a point that the frontier basins is introduced, for goodness sake, for whatever reason. I don't have any problem with that. Oil is becoming an extinct product where people are walking away from. We are owing the international community so much money. Instead of making more money to pay off our debts, we are making more money to pay for a product that is getting phased out. I don't understand that thinking. Maybe I'm wrong, but let me take it that way. Let me take it's my fault. But the bottom line is we are here, okay? So what we have done is aggravate the host communities to the point that they are starting to have meetings. And it's like, look, can't we even do without this oil? Look, we not just shut down this, may everybody go home. You won't die, may all of us die, every die and I die. Do you understand me? And with that, and then you are bringing money again to start funding, operations that have been funded over the years without any result. While on the other hand, again, the Niger Delta oil was not paid for the exploration by government, but by businessmen who have spotted the opportunity. I could go on and on and on and on. I think the whole thing is that we are having people in government that really have no idea why they are there, other than for their stomach and their bellies.
Perhaps a good way to look at it, gentlemen, would be to even consider the opportunities. When we hosted in the course of the week on another program on the station, the chairman, House Committee on Upstream Sector, talked about the fact that we needed to have at least a little bit of faith in the system. There are a lot more on in the PIB than what we have now. In your opinion, Mr. Nyetok, do you think there is a possibility that we are paying a little too much attention or giving a little too much attention to the aspects that are not so rosy, so to speak, as opposed to, you know, talking to the real issues? Because there are a number of other segments, quite a significant number of other things in the PIB that seems not to be getting the same measure of attention as this host community's imbroglio.
Number one is that I'm sure we've been friends for a long time, so you know very well that I'm an architect. Now, what is the prognosis of this? I believe so much in foundation. Even the Bible says, if the foundation be destroyed, what shall the righteous do? What am I trying to say? The PIA is an amazing document. It's going to streamline several operations. It's going to, you know, put processes in place. It's going to bring about corporate governance within the industry. It's an amazing document that is built on sand. That's my problem. No matter how beautiful your architectural plan is, no matter how, the Bible talks about a house built on sand and a house built on the rock, because you are going to have the waters, you're going to have the wind, you're going to have the forces, you're going to have nature come on that structure. If the foundation is not sound, you can't do nothing, except there is peace in the region. You can't get investors. Without investors, all your grand plan just doesn't make sense. Well, number two,
my apologies. The analogy of the house that you just given now just brings to mind the fact that, look, you're an architect. You're just going to have to design a house for us in the air. But let me bring this to Mr. Shomi. You listen to a bit of what he has said. Do you also think that we could be giving a little more attention? Oh, wait a minute. I just understand that Peter Esele has also joined us. He's former president of Trade Union Congress. He's also joins us. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Well, we've had this conversation before. Well, here we are again. So I'll ask you that question as well. Do you think we're giving a little more attention to the seemingly tasteless aspects of this PIA as opposed to the other aspects that have huge promises?
Well, thank you for having me. I would say yes and no. Yes, in the sense that we need to give attention to everything. But most times we always complain when the ship has sailed, and we allow our political actors, we give them leeway. When I hear people making all of this complaint, and I'm telling them, the various communities, you have representative in the House of Representatives, you have representative in the Senate, you have representative in the National Assembly. Were there town hall meetings? Before laws are made, there are supposed to be town hall meetings. Were there town hall meetings? And if there was town hall meetings, what were your representation? What did you present to them? These guys are paid huge amount of money to represent you. So they didn't do anything, or if they did, whatever they had to do, but the community who elected them are not aware of what is happening, because we are aware of the grandstanding that happened on the day of the passage of the bill. That is not what it's supposed to be. You are expected that senators and House of Rep representing these communities will be in the forefront, holding town hall meeting, bringing us more pressure, because that's what democracy is all about. I don't subscribe to doing anything outside of the law, because that will result to anarchy. So first thing first is that we must also look at those who are representing the community. That's one. If the host community, they are not happy with what has been passed, but it's not a law, and we are obliged to respect the law, then they should not go back to their representative and say, hey, this is what we think you didn't do right. And then we also now have to look at other aspects of the PIB. Yes, he's one of my favorite guests when I see him on TV. He always tells you stories. But one other thing that we also have to look at is, what are the inherent opportunities? Now, this bill is about 20 years old that now became an act within the last 2 decades. Nobody has been able to find a way around it. And in my own training is that you have to look at things from, okay, do we take this? And then we continue. And then we also need to understand, we have NDDC. I've always said it, I said, I worked in that sector. I've been in that sector for over 20 years. and you ask yourself, the money, what I expect the communities to do again, that's the various CDA, Community Development Authority, is to look at how much has so far come into this community, what has it been used for? Now, if you talk about the NDC, you and I know that that's a cesspool of corruption. And if we're also not careful whether this 3% comes or not, if we don't also agree that this is where it's going to go, we're also going to go back to square one. Now, politicians will always be politicians. They enjoy divide and rule. So my appeal to the community is that, hey, let us not fall into this trap. Because the same people who are making noise about whether it's 3%, 5%, or 10%, where were they? I watched the governors make comment about, oh, we are not going to agree to this. Governors also didn't reach out. If these senators and House of Representative members are from the state, what did you as a governor, what did you do? Did you call them? Did you make a presentation? Now the president has signed the bill and it has now become an act of parliament. And the only option outside of that is for you to seek for an amendment.
In that light, Mr. Esele, my apologies. In that light, in the light of what you're talking about now, do you think, especially as it concerns the subnationals, because the issue the governors have, for instance, one of the main issues the governors have is that, look, the NNPC is going to become NNPC Limited, and it's not owned only by the federal government, it's owned by the states as well. And in a way, it seems like there isn't any specific provision that says, okay, this is the role or these are the benefits that the states themselves are going to get as a result of their ownership or part ownership of a stake in the NNPC Limited. Let me read to you one of the things that was said, ascribed, that the Nigerian Governors Forum said in a statement that they put out. We recommended that a framework that accommodates the states be worked out and included in the allotment of shares and incorporation of NNPC Limited. Excluding states from these arrangements precluded them from having a voice in the running and administration of the company and excludes them from sharing in the distribution of dividends when they become due. Let me bring that to you, Mr. Showmi. So this is the position of the governors about the PIA. It's a law. It has to be obeyed. Does that in any way for you question the process of lawmaking? The lawmakers, for instance, will tell you that we reached out to all stakeholders. The states are stakeholders themselves. And according to this document, they made a presentation. They made a recommendation. And here we are.
Well, I understand Peter Esele's position. He's working in that very sector, and therefore he's probably going to talk from the viewpoint of being an operator of that sector. But I'm talking as a Nigerian who is not in that sector, but who has also made representation on PIB in the past, not this very one that led to the signing. I remember Professor Sylvester Odion and myself went to David Mark. I was nearly thrown out of Senate for trying, to make representation on PIB. But I feel Peter's position seems to fail to take account of the process of lawmaking in Nigeria and how the structure of votes in the National Assembly. People are calling, we are not talking about a level playing ground where you can make your views, the governors can say, oh, this is what we think, the host governors, and then that will seriously be taken into account. No, that is not what we're talking about. It's already defaulted in a way that those who stand to benefit from the 30% are in the vast majority. But the 30% in the National Assembly
is not at the end of the day, the 30% is not as much as the 3%. It's quite a significant difference.
Yes, you're right. But when you look at the fact that the failure to take account of the views of the host communities, of the governors, host governors, for me, that cannot be right. We can't refuse to take account of their representations and then come back, like Peter said, that they should go and seek amendment. No, these views were known. They raised objections to it, that those views expressed were not taken into account. Therefore, Mr. President, please do not sign it into law. We cannot sign it into law and then turn around and tell the host community, please, we don't want you to disturb, is the law is the law, we don't want you to disturb oil exploration. which in any case is despoiling their own environment, you know, and then ask them to go and lobby for amendment. How are you going to get the amendment through? You need to look at the structure of the country, you know, and where are the majority of the legislators from? Most of the legislators in National Assembly today are from non-oil producing communities.
Correct. But Mr. Shomi, it's already a law.
It is a law.
So,
it has to be obeyed.
And as Mr. Esele said, it's a law. Yes. We have to live with it.
Yes.
So, Mr. Esele, you are laughing. So now with this difficulty, where do we go from
Is that not why people are calling for restructuring of the country, where you do not have, you know, those who are not stakeholders in the economy of a place deciding their future, where you do not migrate resources, you know, from
Mr. Shomi, you know, there's something,
the states to the center,
there's
something, for them to come and beg for
call lobbying. It may not be a career, it may not be a profession in Nigeria as yet, but that will probably put a question to it. Look, I'm just doing my job here, you understand my There are those who would say, look, it's a function of lobbying, or the effect or a lack of the effect of lobbying. Maybe the lobbying was effective enough or not effective enough. Maybe that is why we are here now. So what do you say to that?
It's a structural problem. Like I said to you, David, myself, Professor Sylvester, in a team of us, we did invested time, you know, when in the Senate under David Mark, you know, to try and lobby and get the senators to do the right thing. I know there are so many Nigerians involved in lobbying as senators. At that point in time, they were not interested. What they were looking for is how to get this 30% through, you know, and which is coming not as a result of any specific need of the government, but because we need to invest the 30% in that sector, oil exploration. My argument is this: why do you continue to go to Chad Basin, Adamawa Basin, when you know you have spent billions of dollars over the years with little result?
There are those who would also tell you that we did the same, we did something similar with the Niger Delta as well.
Well, the Niger Delta case is very clear. We knew when we got the oil in Oloibiri,
yeah,
you know, and that was far before 1960s.
But we didn't start it. We didn't start getting oil the very year we got it.
I agree with you. The focus should not even be on oil now anymore. We should be looking at, you know, an economy beyond oil. The whole world is moving away from oil. In the next 10 years, many cars in Europe will be running on gas or electric. They will no longer need our oil. So that's the time when we want to start investing enormous resources into developing the oil that nobody will buy. Okay. So I think that is the major issue there. But when you look at the process of passing laws in Nigeria, except that law, you know, benefits everybody, that law will not go through. Okay. It is only when the host community, you know, at the receiving end, are crying out, saying that, look, this law will not help us in any form to deal with our problem. And that is when people say, okay, go and ask for amendment.
Mr. Nyeto, one of the issues that Mr. Sele also raised, and a number of people have talked about it as well, is that, look, if I remember an interview with Governor Sule of Nasarawa State, who said, look, we're only talking about this 3%, that's fine. But how about the NDDC? How about the Ministry of the Niger Delta? How about the 13% derivation? How effective have those funds and investments and attention of government been in making lives of the people easier? So what difference then will it make, even if this one was increased to 5% or even 10%? We don't see what the others have done.
First, my brother Esele, you know that you're one of my guys. You know that. So thanks for that very awesome compliment. Thank you so much. And you see, Ayo, I feel the pain of interviewers every morning I watch you because you've got to do your work. But you see, at the end of the day, every Nigerian knows the truth. Okay? That said, I would have been a very happy person. Justice, equity, fairness. I would have been a very happy person if 10% of the funds was put in a pool to take over Sambisa Forest, to develop that area into the agri-hub that fits the whole of Africa. I would have been happy if 30%, that 30% was moved for us to transform Sambisa Forest, that a mega problem, into a new city that is another Lagos or another, like big farm for the whole of Africa. I would have been very happy if that was done. Now, Sambisa Forest is in the north, but I will be one of the cheerleaders. I'll be one of those carrying placard and saying, government, go on, go on, go on. But at a time like this, when you say, oh, Niger Delta, what have you done with NDDC? And that's another story. And allow, you can't cry more than the bereaved. We in the Niger Delta, we are unhappy with many things. And we were very happy when the forensic audit was coming in. We are waking up, let me use that word, at the elites, the enlightened people, the privileged people in the Niger Delta. We are waking up to hold our people to account and say, this is not okay, this is not enough. The way I expect the northern elite to wake up and say, we have held power, and yet we are the poverty capital of this country. We have held power, and yet infrastructural development does not exist enough. We have held power, and yet all our children are out of school. Every section has its problems, and the elites need to wake up and address those issues. So we in the Niger Delta, we are addressing these issues, okay? So the point is, what do we do as a nation for us to move forward? Peter has said something extremely fundamental. I didn't want to go that route here, okay? And that is, when a law is passed, it's passed. A law is a law. This has been passed. So we, the elders within the Niger Delta, we know the agitations that are coming in. So what we are doing, and I didn't need to come to public to bring this, to tell our people, bros, listen, we can't smite our nose to spite our face. Yeah. This is going to be an evil wind that will blow no man no good. Let us cool down. This is the conversation that we, the elites, are having downstairs, because the militants are really agitated. They're actually angry. They are really, really, you have no idea. I live here in Uyo. I know what is going on. I know the meetings we have to hold, and we tell ourselves, this is what we're talking, even with Igbo brothers, don't burn your houses, don't burn your people, don't destroy your people just because you want to prove a point. Don't do that. So we're starting to network and talk. But the fact that there is injustice, not only is there injustice, we are diverting our funds to things that are unproductive. So the elites, nationally, we need to come and form that consensus where we're able to say this country cannot continue this way. We need to run on principles that make sense. At the end of the day, this is really what matters.
Well, Mr. Shomi, I'm going to have to bring that to you now before I go back to Mr. Sele. Having that conversation about the elites in the various geopolitical zones, that's quite a chunk of job. I mean, you know, Mr. Sele, beg your pardon, Mr. Nyaito has tried to expand the conversation. We indeed need to expand the conversation now. Having that conversation, various conversations, necessary conversations in pockets of areas over the nation, that's a very important thing. We have the Pandem, the Ohanese, the Afenifere, the rest of them, and it would seem like everyone is still in their different silos. And we are all in one nation. Now, if the conversation that Mr. Nyaito has talked about is ongoing in the Niger Delta, what kind of conversations do you think we should be having in the various localities of Nigeria so that we can have the kind of state of the nation that we want for ourselves? We have peculiar challenges in each of these zones.
You are right. One of the major challenges the countries faced today is existential, which is on the security issue. And then you have poverty pervading the whole atmosphere. We have decreasing living standards, while at the same time wages are not going up, cost of living is really going up. Food is becoming gradually unaffordable for majority of our people. So therefore, we have a major problem. How do we resolve all this? In different parts of the country, many people have actually theorized the elites have actually thought about these problems and came to the conclusion that, look, we need to restructure the country. That if we restructure the country and allow each zone to grow in line with their own, develop in line with their own aspirations, then we'll be creating a peaceful Nigeria, more united, Nigeria. But what we have currently is not allowing for that. We have a kind of unitary system where most of these problems are centralized. They're caused by centralization, and the solutions are to be preferred from the center. That cannot work, which is exactly what happened with the PIB. I'm glad Etuk talked about the elites talking about some of these issues. I can assure you the same discussion is going on around the Southwest here. Nobody wants war. We don't want anybody to blow up oil pipelines because that will worsen, the plight of the economy. But we need to come to a situation where we all agree that if one section of the country is objecting to an issue, we should not rush to sign it into law. Rather, we should listen, go back and re-examine it. So that is not possible currently. The issue of restructuring the country keeps recurring in any discussion. In the first instance, I do not personally think the federal government has any business with oil, as done, because if we claim that we are practicing true federalism, the oil should be owned by the state or the community producing it. That should not be the business of other states in the first instance. They should only pay royalty to the center. And the same thing for other economic activities like mining, gold, and on and so forth. The federal government should only be run, with tax for specific purposes, while the states, actually run the show. One of the major issues currently being debated, in the South and also in the Southwest, in the entire South, is the federal government wants, has indicated its intention, to practice or to allow grazing, open grazing in 25 states. Talking about the old grazing reserves route and all that.
But no. They are grazing reserves. They are areas. They are not routes. They are not mobile. I mean, if you remember,
you need to know the grazing reserves were mobile in the pre-colonial times. What the federal government wants to do is look at those grazing reserves, and then try and create a kind of depending on, until we see the details, a kind of, what do they call it, ranching. That is the feeling we're getting from Federal Ministry of Agriculture. I don't know what is true or not, until we see the full report, which the president accepted. Now, one of the major problems here is that you have the entire Southern governors saying, no, we have banned open grazing reserve. And yet, we have the center, the president, saying, we are going to have to do it. So this is the major problem. When we talk about the elites coming to reach a consensus.
My apologies, Mr. Joe. I don't think it is a problem, and I'll tell you why.
Yes.
And of course, it's a question for you as well. Because in the same course of the week, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, the president was quoted by his NSA as saying he doesn't want to leave this government a failure. So if we continue to have a spiraling rise in insecurity, definitely, as far as anyone is concerned, it's a failed state, a failed government status, and we don't want that. Nobody wants that. So government has decided, no, we're not going to fail in this. So I don't see it in that way. So that is one opinion that government has held as far as that one is concerned. Would you say that that's pointing in the direction of disharmony?
Well, I am very glad to when people repeat that statement made by the presidency. The simple reason is for a long time, many people formed the opinion that Mr. President is looking at the other way, when some of these things are affecting local communities in different parts. In fact, I was very distraught when this got to the level that people like Sunday Igboho had to take over the mantle of leadership of agitations in the Southwest. But I understand from Igboho's viewpoint, because it's about what the people were experiencing at that point in time. So if Mr. President has now resolved to deal with the issue of insecurity, in fact, I'll be the happiest person. But that does not resolve the issue of how decisions are made in Nigeria. The governors, the southern governors, for instance, have said no to grazing routes, but we have the federal government still saying we're going to have look into grazing routes. So what happens? The law is very clear. The governors own the land. They decide what to do with their land, not the federal government. So why is the federal government saying this? While at the same time, we have to encourage people to comply with the law. So what options are we leaving for the elites, in those areas that, look, we need to have a debate. The issue is very clear. We have to go back to restructuring.
I guess your job as elites is not that easy. let me ask Mr. Sele on this matter. You had to sit at several meetings to deal with several of these, national issues. I perceive that it must be very tiring sometimes, especially when it feels like you seem to be dealing with the same issues over and over again. Now, today we're talking about PIA, and we're talking about insurgency, we're talking about agitations all over the place. It would seem like the connections are there, because what affects insecurity directly affects food. What affects one aspect of our lives affects another altogether. So in terms of impact, in terms of coordinating these activities, one of the issues a number of people have pointed to is maybe we're having all of these agitations because there isn't a national ethos to which everyone from the Northeast, the North Central, the Northwest, the Southwest, the Southeast, and the South-South all buy into. What's your take?
Yes, it is very, very tiring, but I'll tell you a story. In my 20s, when I joined Pengassan, as I was working for an American company, and then American servicing firm, and I joined Pengassan. And the first meeting I went to, I was now a branch secretary. So the first parliament, which is National Executive Council, meeting that I went to was very heated. And the president then was Shina Oluoye. And in the heat of the discussion, everybody was losing it. And then he stood up and he said, why did we join this union? Why is this platform so important to us? And everybody said, because we need this platform to negotiate with our management so that we can get a better living standard. Now, that automatically douse whatever tension that we had.
Mr. Sele, I know there is a connection between that and the question, but I'll allow you to answer it when we return from this break. Do stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Mr. Sele, so please go ahead now. I'm still wondering, now you know why you joined the union, to negotiate.
Yes. So now, the instantly, when Shina, the president then, I wasn't even president then, now made that, so that automatically, the tension was doused because we all have one single goal. We all have one single goal to make sure that this platform is kept. And that platform is over 40 years now. Then I asked myself, even in my 20s, I would give up my life for Pengassan because I knew what Pengassan did coming into my company, negotiating and giving me a better way of life. Now, when you now situate that with Nigeria, you now ask yourself, why are we Nigerians? What is tying everyone together? What is that one thing that we all say, no, it's not playing football. Apart from watching soccer, Nigeria is winning. Something outside of that. And you find out that there's really nothing. So how do we get to that level of having everything work in our favor, where every Nigerian have a sense of belonging? The architect talked about foundation. Now we're all looking at the laws, we are seeing whatever is not going on well, but are we looking at the quality, the content, and the character of people we are electing into political offices? That is the foundation. So when the foundation of the quality, the content, and the character of people you are electing is wrong, what do you expect to get out of it? What are you expecting? Then you move to the other one. You have to ask yourself some other question again. Even when I became Pengassin president, I was already, I didn't need to be president of Pengassin to know the value of how important Pengassin is to me. So every Nigerian, what is the sense of belonging for you to say, oh, fine, okay, this is what Pengassin means to me, or this is what Nigeria means to me? Even as a union leader, I will find it easier to deal with my people. If you ask me to go to Federal Ministry of Labor, I will not want to go. I'll prefer to myself and my management to come to an agreement. So we need to ask ourselves, first, let's look at the quality of the people we are electing. Second, let's look at what does these political parties we are talking about, what do they represent? Before coming on stream, what is the APC policy on oil and gas? What is the PDP policy on oil and gas? What are these parties' policy on the economy of the country? Where are you taking us to? That is the second question you ask. And then the third one is you now look at your community. When you look at your communities, how do we fuse together? How do we stop this idea of somebody coming ahead and saying, oh, fine, because it's from my brother, it's my brother from my locality, is chairman of NDDC or what have you, he can get away with going away with 1 trillion. And at the end, he will hire some boys and they carry placard to support themselves. I'll give an example. I shared it in one of my interviews. There was a time I was in a car with my boss and he saw a primary school and he said, hey, I think we need to do something about that primary school. He's an American. Let's do something about that primary school. We have to provide chairs and books for that primary school. Do you know that the community, we had a CLO. It's not the community, but who is representing that community? The CLO did something else that made it impossible for the company to go ahead and do that. And the company just said, oh no, we're not doing anything anymore because we're not ready to give any bribe. So we also need to look at ourselves. And when we look at ourselves, and then the fourth one I'm going to ask again is that somebody is talking about restructuring and what have you, and you are talking about some people are mentioning 6 geopolitical zones. Do you think the Edo man will want to be part of it? There are 2 ways in negotiate, which I also learned from being in the union. There's a positional negotiation, and then there's that negotiation of interest. We are talking about a section of the country. They do that very well. They negotiate based on interest. We negotiate based on position. And that is why most times we come up with this position and say, we want this, and so it must be. And then the rest guys are going about, say, okay, this is our interest. What is your interest? Okay, you can't get all of this. This is what we are giving to you. And they pass it. But because over time we've been talking, we must have this, we must have this, we must have this, we now also find it difficult to back off a little bit to look at it from both sides and see things from 360 degrees view, to know that it's not only about you, it's a collective. You negotiate, and then you come up. In this same country, it was, you will not believe it, it was Shehu Yar'Adua, the late, not the president, who got 13% derivation. I'll take you back again to history. It was Shehu Yar'Adua. And then we're talking about NDDC. I'll give you this behind-the-scenes scope, too. The NDDC was actually driven by Gali Manaba, because a section of the country, too, were not supporting, a section of the country who were in power, were actually not supporting the NDDC. What they say in front of the camera and what they do behind were different. It was Gali Naba and Chubudon Wuche. Gali also reached out to his section, his guys, and said, we need to pass this. Until 2/3 was locking that the executive know that the Senate and the House of Rep have to tell, to write off the president veto power. That was how we got NDDC. Who gave us Ministry of Niger Delta? President Yar'Adua. Amnesty we are talking about today. Where are the challenges that came in amnesty? When Yar'Adua was the president of Nigeria, amnesty was in security vote. So it was directly managed by the president. When President Jonathan became president of Nigeria, amnesty became a budget line. So it was not subject to various manipulation by the National Assembly or whatever will play out there. So there is more to these things that we talk about. And what I'm looking for now is that let's have a lead that will find solution. I'm tired of talking about the problem of Nigeria. Let us now go ahead and be looking at what are the solutions.
But some of those solutions, Mr. Sele, my apologies, some of those solutions are actually in the Constitution. Let me ask Mr. Nyetuk, he's the politician among us here. I'll take you to Section 15 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, and I want to believe that that part is still there, Mr. Nyetuk. Permit me to read almost the whole section of that Constitution. Section 15, sub 3. Let me just stay with sub 3. Sub 2 says, national integration shall be actively encouraged, whilst discrimination on the grounds of place of birth, place of origin, sex, religion, status, ethnic or linguistic association or ties shall be prohibited. I wonder why we still have in the form state of origin if this is something that is our law. But Section 15, sub 3 says, for the purpose of promoting national integration, it shall be the duty of the state to A, provide adequate facilities for and encourage free mobility of people, goods and services throughout the Federation, secure full residence rights for every citizen in all parts of the Federation, encourage intermarriage among persons from different places of origin or of different religions, ethnic or linguistic association or ties, and promote or encourage the formation of associations that cut across ethnic, linguistic, religious, and or sectional barriers. The operative words there are national integration. If we are going to solve Nigeria's problems, clearly it would seem like Section 15 is the foundation, to use your word. How well do you think we are doing in this area?
Thank you. If this is where I anchor for today, I'll be a happy man. So I beg you to just give me about 5 minutes or thereabout. I'll quote my own section, favorite section. It says, Chapter 2, Section 14, subsection 2B of our Constitution states, the security and welfare of the people shall be the primary purpose of government. When you take that section and juxtapose it with what you have just said, it means that the people means generality of the people, every Nigerian, north, south, east, and west. What blows my mind is that each time we complain about the attitude of Mr. President towards being clannish, my very good friend and brother Adeshino always says it is within his right. Now, nobody has been able to challenge that. Unfortunately for me, I'm not a lawyer. But if the section you have just quoted is a Nigerian section or constitution, and Mr. Adeshino says it is within the right of Mr. President to go sectional or clannish, it means there's a contradiction in the Constitution, or he is telling us something that is not in the Constitution, and I wonder what our friend lawyers are doing. That's number one. But let's leave that aside. Within the week, I had the privilege of running into Abuja twice because, like what my brother Esele said, I'm sick. Ayo, you know how long I've been with you. I don't think I've been on channels less than 150 times, to put it conservatively. For how many years? And we just keep going through it. I'm tired. But during the week, God gave me the privilege of being in a pole position to change this completely. And something is coming. There's what you call the National Consultative Front. This is the leaders of conscience across the country, north, south, east, and west. One body that really has come in to be a national body. But we've had a challenge. How do we take on APC and PDP? Because to the mind of an average Nigerian, is an impossibility. But God just dropped this idea. Ayo, my brother, this you may call breaking news, but just in bits. Very soon, there's going to be a national consensus on leadership recruitment, where a most robust platform is being put together for every Nigerian to give us an idea of who they think is good enough to be a president across non-partisan line, anybody. And we're expecting nothing less than 2,000 of such entries. A group of eminent Nigerians are being put together to profile them and give us a manageable number of about 200. this manageable number is going to be put across to Nigerians in the most elaborate, most diverse manner so that every Nigerian gets involved before election on leadership recruitment. And from that 224, 240, which is 60 per geopolitical zone, we are bringing it down to 120. We're bringing on the most exciting, what you may call reality kind of stuff. At the end of the day, that process is going to also be used to evolve an agenda for the state. And we're going to come up with a national rescue team brought about by Nigerians and eventually empty it into the vehicle that either the National Consultative is going to bring about, such that the conversations shift from APC, PDP and shift to Nigerians. Capacity, competence, capability, those were the words that Peter was bringing up. Let us move the narrative and stop talking about these parties and start to talk of issues on a non-partisan, nationalistic level. And because government is the only, or politics, the election is the only way we can do that, we'll empty them into any vehicle. I want to tell you that come 2023, with this game plan that the National Consultative Front is putting together, there's going to be a complete paradigm shift. And Nigerians will start to talk about, imagine that for 60 days, Nigerians are listening to the 30, maybe 32 finally shortlisted candidates, discussing national issues, getting into people talking, looking at them, taking up different issues that are brought up. You know, it moves from APC, PDP. No, it now talks issues. So I think that Channels is probably the first to have a snippet of this, and Nigerians have a reason to be upbeat. And people like Peter Esele are going to be drafted in. He's already one of us, so there's no drafting in to ensure that. And my brother there in the studio, let the narrative speak.
Well, maybe I'll just say, Mr. Esele, congratulations, you've just been appointed on live TV. But Mr. Shomi, democracy is our chosen way of running our affairs as a nation and as a people. And, you know, I know you may want to speak to some of the things that Mr. Anyetok has spoken, but I am always very, very concerned about the youth population. If you look very well, those who look well will see that the largest demographic we have in our nation is between ages 18 and 45. And that's about something in the region of 60 to 70% of the population of Nigeria today. And if you look at our voting pattern, these people don't want to vote. You look at even in the voter register, they make the largest number. But there isn't enough motivation to vote, so to speak. So over the years, since 2003, voter apathy has been a trend over and over again. It speaks to only one thing. The trust quotient is almost dissipated. Our trust bank is in the red. How can we reload that account?
Yes, one of the mistakes which we've been making over the years is to assume that the problem of this country is leadership, which is exactly what Nigerians are being told currently on here. That is not the problem. The youth don't buy that. We've seen several instances of youths revolting over one thing or the other. Either when Jonathan was there, you had the January 2012 protest, or to end SARS, or to Igboho, the young man leading another rebellion, to Nnamdi Kanu leading another. And we've seen evidence of thousands of millions of youths, on street, actually sharing those viewpoints. So how did we achieve that disconnect? Because for a long time, we've been telling the youths that they are the leaders of tomorrow. The problem is leadership. Once you have someone like Buhari, who's not a corrupt person, then you will solve the problem of the country. I'm still hearing echoes of that now. But we've moved past that. We need to think about what these youths are saying. In the first instance, they don't even think that the structure of this country is right. They feel there's a need to restructure it. There's also another section of the youths who believe that maybe they should have their own separate nation. You know, they don't necessarily believe in one Nigeria. Of course, many of the youths believe in one Nigeria. They only want their aspirations, you know, fulfilled within that context. Any country throwing up the kind of corrupt leadership you have in Nigeria should never be talking about leadership. Because the youth will not embrace that.
My apologies, Mr.
We need to look at the structure throwing up corrupt leadership here.
Okay. We have a national policy that speaks to what you're talking about. We have a national youth policy, 2019 to 2023, that speaks to giving opportunities to the youth. To become the best that they want to be, to take on the full opportunities that the nation has to offer them.
It's just policy. Look, in reality, when it comes to brass tacks, go to any political party, most of the youths won't have any opportunity, real opportunity to be candidates, you know, for elections. You see grandees like me and so many others.
Grandees? Oh, interesting.
You know, so many other people jostling for the same position with the youths. And because the whole process has been corrupted, you cannot talk about leadership within the context of the political structure in Nigeria, except we are deceiving ourselves. We need to restructure. One, look at the political parties. Who financed those political parties? They are not the members. They are the money bags. So they dictate who gets what. That is the reality. Whoever pays the piper dictates the tune. So when people come up with, oh, the issue is leadership, who decides the leadership? The candidate is the candidate of the party. The election, you only vote for the party in election, not for the candidate. That is what the Supreme Court decided. We should not forget that. So when we begin to say, is the leadership problem within this contraption in a multicultural, multi-ethnic country, and we're beginning to arrogate it down to PDP, APC, there may be a national consultative front without dealing with the major structural problem, then we're deceiving ourselves. I think we need to look at the structure of the country, restructure it, so that all of us subscribe to it and our youths. And then we can build one Nigeria that we're all proud of.
Well, definitely a lot to grapple with per time. And we're running out of time because at 11 o'clock we'll need to switch gears and go to go for a live telecast now, but we'll still be here for some of you who are on a number of platforms. But before I give you that information, Mr. Yetuk, I'd like to take your final comments for maybe about 30 seconds so that we can close. 30 seconds, way forward.
Way forward, tired of talking, time to do something. We are creating a platform for every Nigerian to get involved in leadership recruitment. Don't only talk. Get involved. We are coming. National Consultative Front. Here we come. Watch out.
You will soon receive our invoice for that advert, Mr. Yetuk. But let me ask Mr. Esele what your last words would be.
Well, I would say, let's give it our all. Let's do our best within the law. If you are not satisfied, we have chosen democracy to be the way of running our country. And if you are not satisfied, you've just quoted a section of the Constitution, we can crowd fund and then let somebody go to court and challenge it. Because once you go to court, it's only going to court that we can do. I don't support carrying arms. I don't support killing anybody. We have to use every means legally possible to seek redress whatever misgivings. Thank you for having me.
All right, thank you very much. And Mr. Shomi, your final words today.
Yeah, I think we need to rebuild a country, Nigeria, where all the youths, where all the zones, all the states, you know, are stakeholders in the country. And we also need to remind the federal government to take account of the views of governors, particularly certain governors on any issue, or northern governors on any issue affecting them. This is the only way we can build a country united that we all will be proud of.
Well, I have to thank you very much, gentlemen, for being a part of this conversation this morning. It's actually been quite enlightening for those who have followed through. Bioti Shomi, a social commentator, thank you very much so much for your time and your sacrifice. Ezekiel Yetuk is convener Nigeria First Initiative. Thank you very much for your time, as well as Yes, Peter Esele, former president, Trade Union Congress, who's just been appointed by Mr. Yetok on Live TV. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Truly appreciate the sacrifices you all made to be here. Well, now, just before we go now, in about this time, the live telecast of the coronation of the Olu of Warri on DSTV platform will be there, and it's already on now, so it might be, you may not even be with us anymore, but so if you want to see that, you can go there. But for this program, we are still here, and you can continue to watch us on StarTimes, Terrestrial, YouTube, our second live stream, as well as Channels 24 UK platform. So, Sunrise comes back to you in a moment. Do stay with us. With us, we turn our attention to cybersecurity, which has become a lot more prominent over the past 1 year, at least. Because, I mean, of course, it's been an issue over the years since the advent and prominence of the internet. But last year, it was like 1,000% activity in the online space. But according to a recent report by a global cybersecurity and digital privacy company, malware attacks in Africa, including Nigeria, have increased to 85 million in just 6 months. Now, for those who do not know what malware attack is, well, you don't have to wander too far. And perhaps the important thing for you is, how exactly does this concern you? Well, Adedoyin Yodeji joins us this morning, MD CEO of Blu-ray. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And we also have Remi Afon, who is President, Cybersecurity Experts Association of Nigeria. He joins us virtually. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Good morning, and thank you for having me today.
Yeah, maybe I should begin with you. It's social studies class, I guess, or is it Security 101? Some people know virus on the phone. What's malware?
Malware is just a short form of malicious software.
Oh.
You know, so when we say malware, we mean malicious software, and it's a short form of malicious software. Malware is just a software that is malicious, that is designed to cause havoc on your system. It might be designed to steal your information. It might be designed to crash your system. It might be designed to encrypt your data. And that's why we have a ransomware. It's a form of malware as well. Mm. So malware is just that malicious software that is designed to really cause discomfort for the owner of a system or a device. Mm.
Well, it might sound quite simple to many, Mr. Afon, but Mr. Adeji, when people hear malware and they have an idea of what you're talking about, malicious software, but how does it affect them?
Okay, thank you very much. You know, earlier in the past years, like you said, we have what we call computer viruses, which essentially is majorly to disrupt how your computer works. So at the initial stage, some of the viruses we used to have were like pieces of software that probably change how your system behaves, okay? But over the years, what we've seen is a gradual shift of attitude or gradual shift of behavior of these actors into using some of these softwares to do more than just changing how your system behaves, to steal people's identity, to steal money from people, to get into systems that normally they won't get into. So for individuals, why it's important is because, like I said, before it just used to be viruses which you can use an antivirus to wipe out. But these days, we have what we call the ransomware, like you said earlier. We have other devices also. We have keyloggers. We have different things that try to get information.
Mr. Adeji, you're speaking above my head. You're probably speaking above the heads of many millions of people right now. So I'm asking because, I mean, people don't know. Okay. That's why you're here. People don't know that, you know, how these things affect them directly. They don't even know that they are vulnerable. So it's that vulnerability that I'd like you to speak with, to speak to.
Okay. Okay. Let me just calm down a bit.
Thank you very much. Nursery school language, please.
Okay. So take for example, you get an email from someone, or you get an SMS from probably an unknown source, and it's telling you to. Okay. I'll probably just start with the most common case study, which is emails, because emails are always like the easy trigger a lot of the times. So you get an email from someone saying that, for example, you have an invoice to check. And you're like, okay, am I expecting an invoice from someone? I'm like, okay, let me just open it up. I see a PDF there, and I click on that PDF link in my inbox. And it opens up another page for me. And it's telling me to log in, like logging into my email again before I can view it. And I log in into my email, and nothing happens. I'm like, okay. I don't know what happens, and I close the browser and probably go to some other things. In the next probably 31 hours, I'm getting notification that my email password has been changed, my contact information on my social media account has been changed, and all that. So it's always it's as simple as that. That's like a simple case scenario where you get a phishing, what we call a phishing email, which is sent out to you. It's sent out en masse, sent out to a lot of people. And the idea is to harvest information. Now, because we have what we call social engineering is trying to trick us, or trying to trick people to behave the way they should behave, like natural human response. You trigger natural human response to get people to do certain things that normally they won't do. So meaning for example now, if I ask you that, okay, give me your email login, the first response will be like, why do you need it? So the next thing I need to do is, okay, if I want to get an email login. I
won't even say that, I'll just say no. What do you need it for?
So the next thing I need to do is, I know definitely I'll get a no from you. So what I need to do is to trick you to giving me that username and password, meaning that I'll send you an email, probably acting as like maybe your IT officer in the office or something, and tell you, oh, your email is compromised, or this is that. Can you log in to verify your information? Or, for example, I could act as your bank and say that your account will likely be blocked. And if you don't rectify it now, you will likely lose your money or something. So by nature, people respond to that, oh, the bank is sending me an information that my account will be blocked, or my PIN number will be blocked, or is hacked or something. I should act on it. So I click on the email, or I clicked on the SMS, and it takes me to a page, and it's requesting me to enter my banking details. And once I enter that banking details, automatically they can always log in into my account and probably do anything malicious with it. So this, like I said, this is just like the general, this is like the most common thing we see around these days. Now, I'll talk about malware. Malware is a bit higher than this, in the sense that when I click on that link, what could happen is that it could automatically install a software on my computer, which I won't even know. And it monitors every of my activities, which is a bit more advanced, meaning that it installs a software, a malicious software on my computer, which monitors everything I do. So if I'm opening my banking accounts and my banking app, for example, it monitors what I'm typing in. It monitors every single thing I'm doing. It monitors all the password I'm entering into.
All on my phone?
Yes.
On my phone?
Yes. So it works on both on the laptop and the phone. For the phone, it could be an SMS. Usually get an SMS, yes. You get an SMS with a link in it, because our phones these days are smartphones. So meaning that even from your SMS, you can open a link inside your SMS. Yeah. So when you open the link, it can always install malware
automatically
on your phone.
Wow. Well, Mr. Afo, I'm sure you would want to expatiate on that a little further, but the question I want you to answer along the line would be, are people even aware that they are vulnerable? Or perhaps another way of asking, how vulnerable are we as a people, especially talking about cybersecurity or cyber insecurity?
Yeah, thanks. Unfortunately, a lot of people are unaware that they are vulnerable. Even apart from individuals, organizations are not aware that they are vulnerable. And according to statistics by Cybersecurity Ventures, cybercrime is going to cost the world about $10.5 trillion annually by 2025. That's to tell you the magnitude of cybercrime. Then about 95% of cybersecurity breaches are due to human error. So a lot of people, they are not really aware that they are vulnerable. And it takes a very long time, even for organizations to respond to cybersecurity attack. Or, for example, you might have a system, and a good example is the malware. You might have a malware running on your system for a very long time, and you won't know that there's malware on your system. It might be gathering information. It might open up your webcam, such that whatever you are doing is recording it, it's doing screenshots. And these days we even receive emails from people that will tell you that, oh, we know some of your bad habits, we've recorded all your information, what you have done. If you don't pay certain amount of money in cryptocurrency, we are going to expose it online. So a lot of people are not aware that they are vulnerable, and we are very much vulnerable. So it's quite important, because even some organizations use some malware. We call it not really malware, they call it adware. Adware means advertising. So some advertisement that you are not even interested in. They plant it on your system, know your habits, browsing habits, and be able to target you to advertise that. Then we also have spyware. Spyware is like a spy, spying on your system and looking at your information. Then we have the ransomware that we have been talking about. Ransomware is quite common now. A lot of organizations are being attacked by ransomware. And even in Nigeria, a lot of some banks, most recently hospitals and universities have been subjected to a ransomware attack. And globally, it's increasing. So we're kind of vulnerable, but we don't know. So the most important thing is for us to, how do I know that I'm vulnerable? That's what we need to be looking at. How do I make myself reduce my vulnerability, so to speak?
Mr. Afon, before you go, because you have to tell us, how we know that we are vulnerable and how to not be vulnerable anymore. I just wanted to ask you right quick, because it will be a concern. You may want to save face. I will understand. I mean, you are an expert, and so you want to protect some things, and not to scare people. But are there banks that are also vulnerable and they don't know?
Of course, even the most sophisticated cybersecurity plan and cybersecurity control is also vulnerable one way or the other. So it's just a matter of reducing the threat landscape and the vulnerability that you have to the barest minimum. So banks are vulnerable. That's quite, that's a fact. It's just for them to make sure that they reduce the vulnerability and be able to respond to any cybersecurity incident as quickly as possible. And that's the reason why there must be a cybersecurity incident response plan. It's not a matter of we are not going to get attacked. It's a matter of when. It's not if. So when we get attacked, what are we going to do? Let's quickly invoke our incident response plan.
We have a cybersecurity law in the country, Mr. Afon. Beg your pardon, Mr. Ayodeji. I'm just wondering what you think of our approach to using that law. Is it even active? Is it being enforced? Do we have, we have a cybersecurity law. We don't need a cyber police, do we?
Well, I would say we do. We do need. I think laws are not enough. Enforcement is key. If you have laws and you don't enforce, then what's the point of the law? And if the law enforcement officers or the law enforcement agencies are not equipped or are not in the capacity to work within this space, then the law is just there as a law, in the textbook or in the book somewhere as a law. So what we essentially need to do, I think one of the few progress we've made in this regard is, I know recently the Nigerian military launched the Cyber Warfare Division of the Nigerian Army, which I think is one of the few positive things we've done with regards to cyber security and all that. But then what we're also looking at is we're also looking at agencies that are in charge of national security, which is the Nigerian police, like for example, like EFCC, this kind of agencies also to do more with regards to how to protect our cyberspace. Because in as much as we would want to say, okay, maybe we are not too vulnerable, the truth is that things are changing. And we are getting to that point where we, as a country, would eventually have to start using technology more. For example, we are talking about our elections in the last few months. We've been talking about elections and electronic result and all that. So no matter how we look at it, we can't continue to do things manually. Eventually, we would have to evolve as a country, as a society. But then what we evolve into is to use technology. And at that point, the question will be that are we going to be ready to respond to things? Because like the Niger speaker said, I think it's our response. It's not, no matter how secure you are, even the biggest tech organizations in the world, the Microsoft, the Apple, and all that, they still get hacked. But the difference between them and several other companies is the fact that they have a very good response time and a very good response to some of these things. So as a country, how are we boosting our response to some of these things in the future?
One of the things anyone would want to raise about that one will be that of capacity, but we'll come to that one. Something you raised, a little while ago, pricked my attention, and I'm just wondering, isn't that why some people, I mean, if they know that they're going to be hacked, isn't that why some people will just say, look, please hold your technology, let me just stick with my manual?
The challenge is, I think I'll just use a quote by Bill Gates, which said, because there are challenges with technology doesn't mean we shouldn't use technology. We can't, the world is evolving, and we can't continue to say, okay, because there will be challenges with technology, so we shouldn't use it, no matter how much you try. For example, technology has its own benefits, also has its own challenges. Now, if you look at even the manual process, it has its own challenges and it has its own benefits. But then the question you should now weigh, you have to weigh both of them. Okay. Which is because if I can do all my transactions right here and here, for example, in the bank, I mean, I don't have to go around the town to do whatever I need to do.
And expose yourself to COVID-19. But Mr. Afon, let me ask you this. While you both were talking about, our response the other time, the question that came to my mind is that of capacity. There are those who believe, or rather who hold the opinion, that in terms of capacity to enforce our laws, especially our cybersecurity laws, we don't seem to have the capacity, or maybe the right caliber of people or people with the right expertise to handle those things, and consequently the shortfall in the area of response time that you talked about earlier. As an association, Cybersecurity Experts Association of Nigeria, what's your take on that one? How is that taken on board?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, you're quite correct. One of the major problems that we have, and it's a global problem generally, because in terms of cybersecurity capacity, there's a shortfall of cybersecurity professionals globally, and also in Nigeria. Nigeria is not, an exemption, and our own is even a worst case scenario because we don't have a lot of cybersecurity professionals. So, talking about implementing the cybercrime law, it was passed into law in 2015, and since that time, there's been a lot of challenges. As a matter of fact, that law is even due for review because there are so many crimes that are taking place now that are not captured in that law. For example, we've started having a lot of cryptocurrency fraud schemes and cryptocurrency crime taking place. So those are the things that we need to look into, But talking about capacity building, I look at it from two folds. The first one is to ensure that the law enforcement agency are properly equipped to do a lot of threat intelligence and to do a lot of intelligence work rather than rushing to arrest people. You see that, and that was what resulted in NSAS in those days, whereby you just see people with laptops, you arrest them. There's a need to do a proper intelligence work, try to monitor the criminal from time to time, and be able to build enough case. Once you build enough case, then you'll be able to arrest that person and come up with damning evidence. And that's the kind of thing we need to do. You need to be able to go into the dark web to do a lot of investigation. A lot of our data are being sold in the dark web. Who are the people compromising those data, selling those data, of even government agencies? So those are the things that we need to start with. We need to equip our law enforcement agencies to get to that level of the likes of developed countries that take their time to do proper investigation. So that's on one part. Another one is you know, the judiciary. The judiciary needs to be properly equipped in terms of capacity. They need to really understand the digital evidence. How do you interpret digital evidence when somebody is when somebody has performed a kind of a cybercrime and they are able to capture those you know, evidence? How do you interpret it? How do you be able to know that, okay, this person has really committed that offense, and be able to link it up with the cybercrime law? So it's something that we really need to do and try to equip the judiciary and the law enforcement agencies. Then one other thing is, you know, Nigeria is one of the leading countries in terms of IT. But unfortunately, we are not even tapping into that space. A lot of our younger generations are into IT. They develop a lot of fantastic software. And some guys even go into cybercrime. Why not look into how they get into that cybercrime and be able to, you know, reverse that and come up with a cybersecurity development program? Most recently, I think about 2-3 days ago, the World Bank announced fund for developing countries. I hope that's going to help in terms of capacity building in Nigeria, such that we'll be able to tap into that fund and be able to channel it into the right direction. And I'm sure the Office of National Security Advisor is also working in that direction, because the National Security Policy and Strategy has just been recently reviewed and is taking care of a lot of this capacity building. So the most important thing is for those lofty programs that is in the National Security Policy and Strategy to be implemented. So we've got fantastic law that needs to be reviewed. We've got good strategy and policy, but implementation, that's the most important thing.
Well, one of the things that came to my mind as you were talking, Mr. Afon, is what you all call ethical hacking. As far as I'm concerned, that is like a name. The surname is hacking. The only representation, the representation is almost always negative. So let me ask Mr. Ayodeji about this one. Cyber attacks always have attackers, and so it's usually done expectedly by hackers, right? Yes. Now, in that regard, we will need to also have ethical hackers who have to be like better hackers than the, what do we call those ones?
Black hats.
Black hats.
Yes.
Okay. So.
Okay. What we have what we call.
We're still talking about capacity here now, you know, so because I even wanted to take you may also, you know, rope in what he said about the judiciary. Yeah. Also being, also scaling up the judiciary, but let me leave that one for him. You go ahead.
Okay, in terms of ethical hacking, usually we have the white hats, which are the ethical hackers, and we have the black hats. Then in between, we have some that do it for...
Who colored their hats? Just kidding.
It's majorly based on their behavior. Now, what an ethical hacker does is sometimes they sign agreements with companies to say, okay, do you know what, we'll try to hack this thing, your software or your platform, and if we find any vulnerability, we would report it to you. Now, which is different from what a black hat or a regular hacker would do, meaning that I want to hack for my own personal gain, meaning I want to hack to get into the system, either to lock up your system, to throw your system off balance, or for monetary gain, either to steal customer information. So what the white hackers, what the white hats do, or the ethical hackers, like you said, is for them to sometimes, like I said, they have agreements with some of these companies to say, okay, do you know what, to look into this system for us. If you find, we have what we call zero-day vulnerability, meaning that zero-day vulnerabilities are vulnerabilities that even the company do not know exist. So most times, most zero-day vulnerabilities are discovered by ethical hackers, meaning that when they go through the system, they're able to find, oh, this particular exploit is there, and we didn't know before, and they will report it. And usually the company will patch up that exploit. Okay. So, but then there are times where when they do that, and they don't exploit. How I call it now? When they report it and it's not patched on time, sometimes the black hat can get wind of it and use it against the company. Okay. So yes, I think what we need to do is to bring a lot of people together to train them in the line of ethical hacking, meaning that because, like he said, we have a lot of young people that are doing a lot of fantastic stuff, and at the end of it, what everybody wants is they want a way out of poverty. Now, what we need to do is to channel that energy into the right places. To say, do you know what? Rather than being a criminal, this is what you can do. Because ethical hackers make a lot of money, a whole lot of money, because there are some companies that even have what we call the bug bounty, meaning that if you're able to find an exploit, they're willing to pay you to find exploit, like they are willing to pay you to find exploit. So if companies are willing to pay you, and there are bug bounties that, it runs into millions of dollars that you can actually make money from. So I think we just need to be able to bring our youth to that point of understanding that you could be on the right side and still make the money you want to make.
Like $1 million thing. Is it too late to be an ethical hacker?
Everybody's open to everybody.
Well, Mr. Afon, I wanted you to take this on. You talked about the judiciary the other time, scaling up or upskilling judicial workers to understand cybercrime and all of that. I remember the vice president, being a legal practitioner himself, of course, spoke recently about the need for the judiciary to also transit into the technology space, scale up, so to speak, as lawyers, as judicial workers, as judges, and all of that, in order to get to the level that you talked about, digital evidence and all those things. How far back are we, and what are the prospects?
I'm afraid we're kind of a little bit backwards in terms of be able to interpret all this digital evidence and trying to make sure that the judiciary are well versed, not to be technology experts, but to be able to understand some of this basic technology and some of the rules of a chain of custody when it comes to somebody presenting evidence in the court. It's not too late. We are moving in the right direction, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done. So there's a need for a kind of overhauling and capacity building, like I mentioned earlier, of the judiciary.
Just a second. So what are the peculiarities? What are the things that make what you're talking about now peculiar in terms of the judiciary and technology?
Yeah, what makes it peculiar, for example, if somebody is coming up with an evidence that a system has been compromised, for example, maybe somebody was just trying to steal an information and they're able to trace what we call IP address, where that thing is coming from, to a particular location. And the person is trying to deny that, oh, I'm not the one, I'm just living in that area. The cybersecurity experts or the forensic investigators should be able to come up with a convincing evidence to the judge. And the judge should be able to look at it and say, okay, this was not actually spoofed. When we say spoofed, what it means is that you didn't claim to be from where you are not coming from. For example, I can spoof the Channels TV's, I'm not going to do that, I'm just saying Channels TV, IP address, and claim that I'm sending an information from Channels TV to somebody else, or try to steal somebody's information, claiming I'm in Channels TV studio. That's what we call spoofing, claiming to be what you are not, what you are not. So when we are doing forensic investigation, gathering evidence, you should be able to list all those things to be able to let the judge know. And the judge, understanding all these concepts, understanding all this technology at a very high level, will be able to know, okay, what they are talking about, and be able to come to a very good conclusion in his own judgment.
Okay.
And also we have what we call a chain of custody when you are trying to gather information. Once that information, or gather evidence, once that evidence is tampered with, the judge will know that somebody has tampered with it. Have you followed the normal process to gather all those evidence? Have you been able to, make sure that you record every step of, collecting those evidence? Are those evidence stored in a secure location? Are people not able to have access to those evidence? Those are the things that the judge needs to look. It's not that somebody is planting evidence on your system.
It's a lot of things that you've packed into these things that you have said, because I'm just wondering if I make a video. I mean, in these days of photoshopping, of video editing and all, understanding the difference within what is real and what is not, that's another, kettle of fish altogether. But God, you're right, we have a lot to do. But for now, we have to thank you very much for being a part of this conversation, gentlemen. Remy Afon is President, Cybersecurity Experts Association. He joined us virtually, as well as Adedoyin Ayodeji, MDCU, Adedeji, beg your pardon, of MDCU of Blu-ray. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Up next is the home stretch, and it's the Artist of the Week. And as Alera would say, it's a he. We'll be back. Well, clearly you probably didn't see his face close enough, but that's our Artist of the Week. Bukomi Preacher is what he goes by, a fast-rising comedian, compere, and an actor. He also hosts a celebrity talk show called Ride With Me. He's led character in series of comedies, short plays developed out of his own written and performed jokes. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Bukomi Preacher. First of all, who is Bukomi Preacher? And why preacher, for God's sake? Tired of preaching.
Not the preacher that you know of. Not the preacher that I would wish that maybe the preacher can collect offering now, and because at least I can buy a private jet too. But this preacher for me is so I used to write. I still do, but not as much as I used to. But I remember then. So my father is a pastor. I grew up in the church all my life. So at the end of every of my articles then, I would put the preacher's son. The preacher's son. I was a banker then. So
the money from the bank wasn't enough?
It wasn't money for me. Bank only gave me money. So for me, passion and time was not there. So I had to leave. They gave me money.
Come to that.
So when I wanted to, so at some point I was like, some of these things I'm saying too. I'm a preacher myself. Instead of saying the preacher's son, so I just removed the preacher's son and let it be preacher. So and then 2012, when I resigned from banking, I needed a stage name, and I need a name that you can call, whether you are Yoruba, Hausa, Igbo, all across the world. It's easy for you to pronounce. And preacher for me stands, and what I stand for in entertainment, I do ethical jokes, I do ethical materials, I do materials that every member of the family can consume. So, and it's more, not religious, but ethical. So preacher sounds like a right.
Okay, I'll come back to that as well. But that thing you said about transiting from banking into entertainment, comedy, to be specific. How easy was it? There are many people who, just to think about having to move from one career to another, it's even unthinkable.
Let me say this now. I want to, where's my camera? This is my camera. This is my camera, Abi. I want to say thank you to my sister, Shile, who borrowed me money to balance my house rent the year after I resigned. I resigned from Generation Bank, good bank. I was doing well. And the year after, I needed to pay my house rent. I could not afford to. My sister, who I just thanked now, was a copper then. She borrowed me part of the money to complete my rent. So I remember I was in Abuja recently to host a wedding. I travel a lot for weddings. And someone was asking me, they say you left banking to do the assessor. This Abuja that you see me, I flew in and I'm going back on somebody's bill. This hotel that we met, but as a banker, I just see plane. There's an aeroplane. But, it was not easy. It wasn't easy. That's why I'm going. But I discovered that if I didn't fly that time. So I knew that I wanted to live surviving. I want to live what to eat, what to drink, where to live, just what I was gaining as a banker. I had money, but the concept of purpose is not clear for me, so I had to leave.
You see, what you just talked about, you know, this purpose thing, it's... it doesn't bring food on the table. That's the primary thinking. I mean, you understand what I'm talking about. That's the primary thinking. Purpose doesn't bring food on the table.
It doesn't.
I mean, I just want to do something that makes me happy. Makes me happy doesn't make me satisfied.
Let me solve that problem. Anything that you do in life would give you three things. Would give you purpose or passion, money, and time. Anything that doesn't solve two of that, don't do it. It's a waste of life. Few people will get the three. Maybe footballers, entertainers like myself, you know, will get the three. If you love what you do, passion, purpose, it brings you money and it gives you time. If you have time, if your work gives you time and passion and no money, go and use the time to make money for yourself. If it gives you passion and money, no time, if you have time, what will you use it for? Maybe you're already in your passion. If it gives you time and passion, no money, and go and use the time to make extra money.
So here you are preaching, right?
No, it's just
but that
was what helped me. Okay. That was the formula I used. And I had help, though. People like Teju Babyface took me under himself. And if you trade under the secret of success in entertainment, especially in house of comedy, is mentorship. It's one industry that you can come in if you are ready to learn, regardless of your age, of your self-thoughts, wisdom or something. Be under someone before you know you do well. So I think Teju Babyface did a great deal to help to, you know, shape some of these things, focus my head and say, no, you are in marathon. It's not a sprint. Calm down. So that was it. Okay,
I've also observed, I mean, that you sometimes wear different characters.
Some of them get me kidnapped or beaten one day.
Okay, so tell us some of them.
So,
and you will act one after the other,
okay.
Each one of them.
So the characters that people would like me to actually first of all do will be the Aliberi character that advise people.
Okay.
See, I'm from Ibadan. I was raised in that city. And if people think that Ibadan no abuse, just ask questions.
Hey.
Like, you know, like, are you normal? Are you serious?
So Ibadan speak Yoruba like that?
Can I speak Yoruba? Ibadan kì í bú yan ṣe ẹ̀yà wèrè sórí yín ó dàrú ṣé ó rẹ̀ yín ṣe gbádùn ṣé ó mọ̀ nílé. So it's not abuse. It's just I'm trying to clear question. And I remember that.
Okay, one of the comparisons that they usually that they say that they accuse you Ibadans of saying that you'll just be abusing somebody and comparing the person to something.
Sometimes some people we need to give them a picture of what to see. They cannot see themselves. Like, you need to. Okay, sorry. But I'm a gentle soul. So that's the character Aliberi. Aliberi does a lot of advice. So she would something like, you are saying that you want to lose weight, but every day is your cheat day. The way you are eating pizza, you are eating ice cream. And when they ask you why, say, it's my cheat day. You already have stomach, and we like you. You have good behavior.
No, so which one in 20 seconds, the way that character would say.
You cannot lose weight. Or pizza, or mu ice cream. Toba Saturday, or more body magic. So it's saying that say we like you, you have good behavior. This one that you are. Have you seen ladies at parties? They go and use body magic. I don't know the magic in that thing. You squeeze the stomach.
That's one character. We don't really get enough time. What's the other character?
The character is a prophet.
Okay.
It's called the prophet Theophilus. And it's a prophet that has an interpreter. The interpreter helps to connect with his audience because he speaks Yoruba. So he needs an interpreter to get the audience to know what he's saying. So because he says things like, some of you are angry that you've not seen me for some days. Don't be angry, I went to Jerusalem. I went because of your problem. I brought in some materials from Jerusalem. If you want to build us, come and buy sand, you mix it with your... You know, people have problems. Problems are deeper than usual. You know, Lagos, there's no problem in Lagos. In Lagos, demons deal with traffic. Outside Lagos, they deal with the people. So when you need anointing that is strong.
Okay, so this is a Halle Berry, right?
Oh, that's...
Yes. Up Nigeria progress. Let me tell you.
This one was saying that if you are Nigerian abroad, in the diaspora, and you've spent 10, 20 years, can you please come back home?
So the
Batch B, you want to go. The idea is when you come back, come and build the country. Some of us that are here too, let us go and learn what you've learned.
Sure Batch A wants to come back.
That's the problem, they don't want to come back.
Okay. Well, I've heard about Prophet Hugh. There's another character. I think it's it's another. You don't just have one.
No. That's what I just mentioned. Then I have another character that's me. I try to deal with. So if you check any of my content, I try to deal with social vices. I try to deal with maybe domestic violence.
How strong, how serious are those issues in our society that you have to address them?
So they are so serious that everyone should pay attention to them. And you see, what I've since discovered is people listen to their celebrities more than they even do their pastors. So I can put issue of domestic violence or bad governance in a joke. And everybody will listen to it. You will listen, you will laugh. But you would rarely see people listen to a pastor 1 hour stretch. And
but one of the things that one would want to address is the effect. How do they, take those things into society? For instance, I know you a little. You must be sickened by the fact that someone, riding in an posh air-conditioned vehicle will roll down the glass of the window and throw garbage out, and you put that into a joke. How does it translate? How does this transcend into behavioral change?
Now, sincerely speaking, I must be sincere that we still don't have that yet. And this is the problem. The comedians or the skit makers that we have are people who use comedy. And I say this with no sense of apologies to any one of them. They use skits to cover up some things. They are not really comedians or skit makers. They bring their immoralities into what we do. So if you have, and we have plenty of people that are doing moral stuff, trying to change stuff, but there are few of them. What you will get is people trying to objectify women, trying to promote violence, trying to, just also fight. So you are just a whisper in a big bang noise.
But perhaps that also speaks to what responsibility entertainers must take up. For instance, music. Musicians use their music, the lyrics of their music, to foster behavioral change as much as possible. A number of people will reference such songs as Joy of the Living in the 90s, We Are the World in the 80s, Heal the World by Michael Jackson, and so many others like that, Storm is Over, stuff like that. How does that happen in comedy? I ask that because I happen to know that the entertainment, the comedy section of the entertainment industry is quite homogeneous, if I can say that. I mean, we seem to have a respect for the, should I say, hierarchy?
Yes.
In the system.
Yes, there's a hierarchy.
That perhaps speaks to the fact that there is a need for a sense of responsibility on the part of the comedians to take on a challenge and say, look, we need to have a message for our nation that will help behavioral change.
The beautiful part is because it's not a society that you join by filling form association. Anybody can just wake up and say they are comedians. And I know for starters, Alibaba, for instance, frowns at the fact that anybody can just call themselves comedians. And I remember there was a case of rape, like last year, I was glad that comedians took it upon themselves to make a deliberate campaign against that. With these kids, with the promotions, with the, you have a lot of them on that bill, and we make sure that, on our own bill, to make sure that we speak to these things. But what I'm saying is we need to do more. And you see, if entertainment, if comedy in entertainment was to be a software, we'll probably be loading at 60% or 50%. So we are not even yet to capacity. It's still an industry that is trying to evolve. So while we're trying to build the industry, you are trying to deal with some of these issues there. So I know that they are doing quite a lot of things to make these things happen, but we need to do more.
Now, let me take you on this, lastly, before we call it a day today. I know you're a Christian.
Yes.
And you also attend the church. And then there have been talks around the identity of comedy in the church. How have you been able to deal with it, both as an industry, as an individual?
As an individual, I'm not so really happy with the church, to be sincere. The church should do better than help the people there so that they can help to, make these things happen. Because outside they get more help than they do in the church. Now, when they go out the church, we say that they are gone, they are not ready. But for me, I don't like to be called a Christian comedian because you really won't get any support with that. I like to do my things ethically, do what I know works for God still. But as regards the issue of church, I'm not sure I'm in a good place to discuss that because I think the church should do better than we are currently doing.
Are you looking to become a pastor yourself?
No. You don't have to become a pastor to even make changes happen. Every Christian has the responsibility to do that.
I'm just wondering what it will look like to have a comedian as a pastor.
Are we not pastors already?
No. Just you know what I'm talking about.
If you want me to do it, I can collect offering now. Let's just do this thing. It's offering now, offering time.
Go ahead. We do digital offering now.
I can send you. But really, we are Christians too, and comedies like doctors, like nurses, so we can become one.
Okay, well, I have to thank you very much this morning for being a part of this conversation. Bukumi Preacher, his name is actually Bukumi Adelani. He is known as Bukumi Preacher, and his professionalism and clean, family-friendly jokes endear him to many. And don't worry, I can't advertise for him. He'll happy to do that one. Thank you very much for being
Thank you for having me today. Thank you so much.
Well, that's Sunrise today. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. And if you would like to join us for the Olu of Warri coronation going on our DSTV platform, have a wonderful rest of your weekend. I'm Ayo Makinde.